Hello, everybody. Welcome to what is, for me, the first video on this channel. Spencer has done a few video recordings of himself in the interviews or podcasts that he and I do, but I had the opportunity to do the interviewing for a minister friend of mine who's also a therapist to talk to him about therapy and how it affects his ministry and how therapy and Christianity can kind of work together. And as we were calling together and talking together, we hopped on Skype and had the ability to record both sides of our video. So we thought we would upload that for everyone to watch, as well as listen to, or choose whichever one of those you want to do as you desire. So we hope you enjoy this particular interview on theology of therapy and counseling, and are able to learn a lot and be encouraged from this particular interview.
All right, Chris, hello. Welcome to recording with me for the first time in, I don't know, man, 5 years, 6 years, maybe longer.
This is very much reminding me of the good old days.
The good old days. Yeah, we peaked then.
Yeah, the good old strong church and the overcome porncast days.
Oh yes, yeah, those were fun. We had some
Yeah.
good music for those, some good
Yeah.
images for those. Oh man. Well, we're in different positions now than we were. I have a beard now. I don't think I did when we were recording some of those things.
I still do not have a beard, or I'm still incapable of growing a beard.
Fair enough. Fair enough. If it makes you feel any better, my dad doesn't. He can, but it's like dry. So my brother and I have the beard all the time, and my dad just can't. So
yeah, I have several people around me that I live vicariously through their beards.
Man, if I had one, it would look like that guy's.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would look so wise, and people would actually listen to me.
It does help. Not gonna lie, because I would look 14 without this.
I struggle with that. But this is my the lack of beard is my thorn in the flesh. Is what like God doesn't want me to appear too wise.
The ego would get too out of control.
Oh, yeah, people would listen to me too much.
It's a natural check and balance.
Yes. Yeah.
So Chris and I used to record all sorts of podcasts back in the day. We had a couple different websites that were going. One was church and culture. The other was pornography focused and helping with those kinds of things. A month after Strong Church kind of went away, then Spencer reached out to me, who's the other guy on thinkingtheologically.org, and said, hey, do you want to do website stuff? Because I'm working on master's and then probably PhD in ministry and want to put that material somewhere. So I said, sure. So Strong Church went away, and then we just kind of jumped right into the shell of Strong Church here, and the foundation of Strong Church is now what this is. And so you're back to Strong Church in a way.
I just figured you were like looking for a rebrand, like
no.
Strong Church was just, that's just so, 5 years ago.
I liked it. We were running out of time. Like, we were busy constantly. Sure. We're still busy all the time, but he was like, hey, I have all the material. Can you just co-host and edit stuff? I'm like, oh yeah, if that's all you want me to do, sure. Yeah. So I'm the perpetual co-host. Kind of that today anyway, because we're going to hear very few things from me, hopefully, and listen here to somebody who's been busy with counseling and things like that. You very much leaned into the overcome stuff and took that to the next level. So, Chris, why don't you tell the audience here as we get started, who are you, and what made you get interested in, what's your degree in, what do you do, why did you pursue those things? Just lay it all out for us.
Yeah. So I've been in full-time ministry now for 12 years. right?
Yeah, yeah.
I count preaching school as full-time ministry.
Oh, do
I don't
you?
do you?
I haven't been.
Mainly just because it sounds longer and sounds more impressive, right?
That's
Like I've been
true.
doing this a long time.
That's true. So
Uh,
it's been about a decade, yeah, otherwise. So I was
yeah.
trying to think through because you and I were a year apart, right?
Yeah, I graduated in 2013.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
So anyways, I've been in full-time ministry for about a decade. Um and besides the pornography stuff, which I had been doing a lot of research in just for myself, wanted to help myself out, but then also this ministry that you and I started, with Overcome, that is still around today and still active and stuff like that. But the first church that I went to, um, I was a youth minister, and immediately as soon as I got there, it was like, hey, welcome. We got a bunch of problems, and they're
Yeah.
all like family issues, right? Of
Hmm.
of just people that they needed counseling. They needed someone to talk to, someone to give them advice, someone to be a third party. And I like to talk, and I like the Bible, and so I
Yeah.
mean that's why I became a preacher. But besides that, it was very. I felt very ill prepared for that part of ministry coming
Mm.
out of preaching school, and that's
Yeah.
not a knock on Bear Valley. I would say that most preachers coming out of preaching schools, or even 4-year universities that go into the field, would probably say the same thing. Of like,
Yeah.
I know how to prepare a sermon, I know how to preach it, I know how to teach a class, but as far as like, oh, this person's coming to me with real problems that I have like no clue, no experience in dealing with. Like, what do I do?
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. Especially like if you thought about the stuff that you've dealt with over the last decade, I'm thinking about conversations I've had over the last decade going, it would just unfeasible for a school to go, let's cover all the edge cases.
Yeah,
Can't do that.
yeah,
But
no,
that's
there's
what
no
you
way.
face all the time is the edge cases.
There's no way. So I mean, I kind of stumbled through that, and honestly, I was a youth minister, so I don't know if they were expecting very much out of me,
Well,
to
and
be
and
honest.
beardless and beardless.
Yes,
So it's
beardless. I mean, if you think I look young now, imagine me 10 years ago. I mean, I basically looked like these kids that were in the youth group. And so I just kind of stumbled through that, did my best, with what I thought, that these people needed to hear. Went from there to Pennsylvania, into a pulpit position, um, and same thing happened. It was like immediately I got there, and people were like, "We need help," and I was like, "Oh, okay." And now that I'm in, I'm in the big boy
yeah, the
position
guy. Yeah,
now.
yeah, yeah.
I don't have the excuse of like, but I'm just here to have fun with the kids. Um, so then I did my best. Still felt very, ill prepared, for that. And so because of, like the stuff with Overcome, and because it seemed like God was constantly putting me in positions, where people needed counseling around me, I decided, I think I was there for maybe a year before I made the decision that I was going to go back to school,
Mm.
um, and get my master's degree in counseling. And if you don't know, the way most preaching schools work, is that you either get a certificate that isn't like worth anything, at least in like mainstream academia,
Yeah,
right?
it's like
It's just it's a
state accredited, not
yeah.
nationally accredited. Yeah, yeah. Yeah.
And so the one that we got at Bear Valley, well, it was state accredited, but it was not nationally accredited.
Yeah.
And so, you know, there's a bunch of hoops, that I had to jump through. But I found a school that was close to me out in Pennsylvania. It was only 30 minutes
Hmm.
away from me.
Nice.
And they're attached to some, denomination out there. It might be,
Okay.
Assemblies of God. No, it's not Assemblies of God. It was some denomination.
Sure.
And it seems like they have in their faith tradition schools that are much like our Church of Christ preaching schools, and so they accept these state accredited degrees.
Nice.
And so I got into this program. It was only after the fact, after I got in, and people, like all of my classmates around me, were like, "Man, we are so lucky to be here." Like this was my top of the list, my number one school on it for all of these different reasons. And I was like, I just kind of fell into this. I don't know how I got in here. Maybe they just felt pity for me. But so I went to Messiah University, which that sounds very Christian, right?
Pretty good. Yeah.
If anyone from Messiah is watching or listening to this, I'm sorry. But where they might, bill themselves as a Christian school with, Christian education, at least in my experience with the counseling program, it is very not Christian education. And I think part of that is because of their accreditation. They're what we call a K-CREP school, which is basically means that when you take your master's courses for counseling, and then when you go to apply for your licensure, you either have to have your degree from a K-CREP accredited school, or you have to then justify all of the courses that you took at a different university, right? And going to a K-CREP school just kind of cuts all of that out because it's nationally, certified. And when you go for go in front of the board, they look at that and go, "Oh, okay, so you're good education wise."
Yeah.
So don't want to. I'm definitely not tooting my own horn here because I don't know how I got into this school. I seriously think they just felt pity for me and just let me in. But that's where I went for my master's degree in marriage, couple, and family counseling, because that's what I was being asked to do the most of was basically family and marriage counseling for people. And so I thought, this will give me some credibility when I'm talking about pornography addiction type stuff. But also, I just wanted the tools. I wanted the tool set that will help me in what I was facing in my ministry life. It took me 3 years to get through it, and definitely never want to do anything like that ever again.
No, but that's cool. So you're, I don't know how you got into school and all that stuff, but you ended up feeling the pull because you have all these people coming to you at these two places you go to. Happens to be this place half an hour away. They accept you, all this sort of stuff. You can't. Well, you can. I don't know that I'm comfortable going, "Hey, that's Providence," but hey, it might be. It might be Providence in a lot of ways there. Okay, very good. Yeah. So a passion to just be able to handle the situation. I know that some of the situations I've dealt with, anytime somebody comes to me, I'm always sitting there like, please be a biblical question about the thing that you're asking. I can walk you through the Bible all day. Let's do that. But there have been some personal things I've helped people through, but there have been other things where I'm like, hey, I know a very good Christian counselor. Like, let me refer you there, because there are those situations where you go, that's above my pay grade. I'm sorry, I can't help with that.
Yeah.
Being armed with the tools for those things to be able to say, I can deal with that. We can address it in this way. I might even be able to help walk you through it, all the way to be able to manage it. Very, very good and helpful. Good reason. So it wasn't for the money. It wasn't for the You're turning degrees into your beard.
No. I mean, so yeah, Bear Valley was free. This degree
Yes,
definitely not
definitely not.
free. Um,
Here's a question I have for you. So, as somebody who's in ministry but also doing this now too, and we talked, I think prior to the recording, you've got clients, things like that, that I assume are regular people you meet with. How do you balance the time on ministry expectations and schedule, and then also, which is ministry too, but different sort of thing? How do you balance all that?
yeah. When let me back up. After Pennsylvania, I moved out here to Wyoming,
Yeah.
which for some of you might seem like a downgrade. It definitely was not. For me and my family, my wife grew up in Wyoming. I grew up in Nebraska, and so this was like an opportunity for us to come home.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and we love it. But I was right in the middle of my master's program when we switched jobs. And so, during the interview process, I made it clear to the elders that, this is something that I'm doing and I would like to finish. And of course, the elders were all on board for the same reason that what you just said, Jack, of that, typically whether it's people coming and talking to our eldership or people coming and talking to our minister, if there is an issue going on that's kind of above their pay grade or above their
Mm-hmm.
capabilities, then like in the past, they just refer out, right? Of like, we have these Christian counselors that we know of, and we get them in contact with them, and whatever issues that they might have, hopefully they get them addressed that way. And so with the prospect of like being able to have an in-house counselor
Yeah.
here for the congregation, they were completely on board. And so then we negotiated, then, what does that look like? How do we balance that? And right now, what I'm allowed to do is to have 8 clients at a
Okay.
time, which I can tell you 8 clients when you're also a full-time preacher is
That's a
enough.
lot.
It's
Yeah.
more than enough, in fact. And that is both for the kind of our in church clients, and then clients that I get that are just from the community.
Mm-hmm.
8 total across the board. Sometimes, like, we're coming up on the summer months, it normally dips down. That I kind of sit around like the 3-4 range for the summer months, and then once it starts getting cold and you can't go outside, and
Yeah.
people are depressed.
Yeah.
I think this winter I kind of swelled up to like 9 clients.
Mm.
And so it's just kind of whatever is going on, and people that need help. But I should say this, as we get into this subject, I am not an LPC or a licensed professional counselor. I don't have my license, and that is on purpose. And I'm sure, I don't know. You want to get into that now?
Sure.
Of
Yeah.
the talking about the system, and this is Chris Krotz's opinions that I'm sharing on this podcast. So
Yeah.
if you are an LPC, or if you're anti-counselor, or whatever, I'm going to do my best not to make sweeping statements, because everyone's situation is situational, right? And I can't say that this is how it is for everyone, but this is my experience with it.
Yeah.
Of going through school, I got a front row seat to the system of what is the business side of counseling. And I walked away from that experience with a very sour taste in my mouth, of that it seems like, to me, that the insurance companies completely run not only the business side of counseling, but also the schooling part that is required for it, and then all of the licensing boards. It's all run by the insurance companies who control the money.
Mm.
And I don't like that.
Right.
Not just the control part of it, but then in order to to receive a license from a licensing board, you have to agree and adhere to a certain code of ethics for them. And when we start talking about ethics, you don't have to go very far to realize that the world's concept of ethics and biblical ethics are two completely different things. And as a preacher, then I would have to then kind of you can only serve one master, right?
Yeah, you like compartmentalize the two.
Yeah, you can't serve two masters. So are you going to be adhering to this the APA which is the American Psychological Association, their code of ethics, or are you going to go off what the Bible says? And so I decided not to get my license. And so I am operating as a non-licensed master's level therapist in the state of Wyoming, which puts me under the umbrella of basically life coaches.
Sure.
Okay. So all of the assistance that I give is not from like a psychological manner. It's more of a me walking alongside people as they go through life and experience various difficulties, and I help them through them.
Okay, yeah. So you probably have more to say about system stuff, which we can get to here in a minute too. From that perspective, then, master's level, helping walk people through and all of that stuff. So in what ways would you say the degree has helped to serve, take somebody like me who does not have, I didn't have any of that schooling, but I am in ministry, and have helped walk through some things with some people. How has this helped to kind of level up that side of things for you?
I would in various ways.
Okay.
I think that there is I think there's a possibility for for preachers to learn some what we call attending skills, which is basically like active listening, asking questions of people, just learning how to hear people and let them know that they've been heard. That like people can learn that, and you don't need a master's degree in order to do that.
Sure.
In fact, I can just give you a book recommendation, read the book, and you'll probably be better at doing some quote, like pastoral counseling,
Sure,
type stuff. Where it really helped me was in those fringe cases, where someone comes to you and says, "We just found out that our older child is molesting our younger child."
Mm.
Like,
yeah, yeah. Yeah.
What do I do? Like I think that that's like the nightmare situation for most preachers of like,
yeah, what's the passage?
what verse? Like, come on. There's got to be a verse. Come on, help me out here. Or I mean, so I've been doing this full time for 2 years. My interning was an entire year, and so I've gotten a lot of exposure to a lot of things. And what I think some people who are critical or maybe hypercritical of counseling in general, I don't think they realize some of the dark and ugly things that people have gone through in their lives, that they feel, like, because you always hear about anxiety and depression, and stuff. Those are the two big ones, right? And It's like everyone's got anxiety and everyone's got depression, so it's like everyone is going to counseling. Where like a large portion of my clients, they struggle with anxiety and depression, but then there's also ones who have been molested by their parents, who have have been raped by multiple people as a young person, and they now are adults and they don't know how to deal with these things because their mind and their brain has been completely molded by living in this world of darkness. I've worked with young people who are living in an environment where their parents tell them to their face that they have no value to them, and that the only reason why they are allowed to live in their house is because the court makes them allow them. And you talk about the amount of damage that those types of things bring into someone's life, and then they finally find the strength within themselves to reach out for help because they don't know what else to do.
Right.
What the master's degree for me has helped me out with those situations in particular. Of one, how do I react to this without the just what?
Yeah.
That's the one thing you don't want to say is that's crazy.
Yeah.
Don't want to say that in a counseling session, because then you just isolate them further. And as much as hey, I'm a preacher, the power of God's word is incredible, and he can do more than all we ask or imagine. Absolutely. But for these people who are living in their, in many people's worst nightmares, throwing a Bible verse at them, saying, hey, you shouldn't be anxious about anything. But through prayer and supplication, let your
pray more
requests be made known to God. That means nothing to them, because it's like I'm just struggling to not kill myself right now, and in order to get a person to the point where they can, in counseling we talk a lot about core issues or root issues, things like shame and abandonment and abuse. That oftentimes when they're, we talked about that with pornography addiction, right? That pornography addiction is a symptom of a problem. It's not the problem itself. It's a symptom. And we see these symptoms all over the place: anxiety, depression, serial dating, codependency. Like those are all symptoms. Anger problems, right? They're all symptoms of a deeper issue. But sometimes in someone's life, as much as you might want to address that core issue in their life, you can tell them like, hey, this all stems from your abandonment in your childhood. There are so many fires going on in that person's life that they can't, they don't care about that. It's like, I know that I was abandoned, but I got this going on, this going on, this going on. And sometimes you need to just kind of focus on putting some of these fires out before they're actually able to be receptive to any words of wisdom or the Bible itself.
Yeah. So you made a comment there just a little bit ago about God's word being powerful. Obviously, you and I both believe that, and I think it's a good time where the name of thinking theologically, the whole point of all of this, you're not. You literally just went out of your way to talk about, I don't want to have to compartmentalize biblical ethics, these ethics, whatever. I want to be able to be Christian counselor. I am a Christian this. You're not, somebody might hear that and go, oh, he's not throwing verses out. There are verses that talk about some of these things. There are sometimes principle is all we can get, especially with the more severe and specific kinds of situations. You're like, yeah, there's nothing here. Like, we're going to have to use the tools that the Bible helps us to have, principles, things like that. And that's what you're doing. You are not throwing theology away. You are incorporating it into what you are doing. Even if you're not quoting verses or saying this is what Jesus wants for you or all that stuff, if it's just, hey, let's focus in on this issue that's happening. And you may never mention God, which, by the way, we've got Bible books that Ruth never mentions God, just so we're clear. But God's all throughout that book. You can do that. It's not a book that's absent of theology. We take those things and bring them into every aspect of our lives. And I just wanted to make that clear here to everybody listening. Like, you don't compartmentalize those things. Whatever job you're doing, whoever's listening, whatever job you're doing, I hope you're bringing your Christianity into those things. And you may not say the word Jesus every day or quote Bible passages every day, but those things should be flowing through your actions and behaviors and your thought process. And that's what it sounds like you were doing as a counselor. And I think some people miss that and go, "Oh, this guy's counseling. Well, he thinks this way over here, and then when he's doing preaching stuff, he's over in this way."
Yeah,
just wrong. Just wrong way of thinking. Man, there was something else you said, and I meant to write it down, and I didn't because I thought I'd remember it, and I didn't remember it. It was right there at the very. Focusing on the fires. Sometimes you have to put out these things before you can get to the root cause of stuff. Yeah. I don't know if this is a system thing. It's certainly been a criticism that has been seen and levied against counseling of the amount of time. Is that a system thing? Is that a process thing? Is it both? Like, does it depend?
It's a big thing, I can tell you that.
Yeah.
And I think there's several parts of this. Going back to the system part. So the code of ethics, or at least how most counselors are trained, is to help people, right? It's called unconditional positive regard. Means that no matter what problem someone comes through our door with, we're going to help them, and that should be the motivating factor for every counselor, Christian counselor, secular counselor. That should be our motivating factor for doing the thing that we do. However, money's a thing,
right?
Like you need money to live. And I know some people are very critical of preachers in the amount of money that we make. So like as soon as money enters into the equation, things get messy.
Yeah, you'll have the criticism from outside, but you're also going to have the people that are in pursuit of the money too, because it's there.
Yeah,
it can be there.
Yeah.
And then you have most of your people who are just like trying to just do a job and be able to take care of their family.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, I'm trying not to make wide sweeping comments here because I'm not saying every counselor is solely money motivated, and I'm also not saying that every counselor is like, oh, I would do this for free,
right?
Because there's definitely both ends of the spectrum and everything in between. But I can tell you this: with the way that the system is set up, the counselor can, in some ways, be incentivized to make their treatment programs as long as they possibly can, because as much as you are a person to them, you are also a paycheck to them, because that's how the system works. Granted, and I've experienced this in my time in the field, that there's no shortage of people who need help.
Right.
And so the way it should work is that the counselor is constantly trying to counsel themselves out of a job. I want to try to get you as healthy as I possibly can in the shortest amount of time as I possibly can, because not only does that help the client out, it also helps the counselor, in that if they are truly wanting to help people, then that allows them to help even more people. But sometimes if you're you can view people as an easy paycheck of, man, they're going to come to me regardless. And so why would I cut this, $200 insurance payment off?
Right.
When I know this is a sure thing. They're always going to keep coming. And so that's one side of it. The other side of this idea of, like, if you're you should only go to counseling for X amount of time.
Right.
I have clients that they know this about themselves because of the trauma that they've experienced, that they will most likely be in counseling for their entire lives. If it's putting out fires, it's that. If it's doing deep work of talking about core issues in their lives, but there's been so much damage done in their lives that we can be optimistic, but the realist in me knows that they're either going to be with me until I die, or they're going to get sick of me, and something volatile will happen, and they'll go find someone else. But they're going to be talking to someone for the rest of their lives. And so to say that, from a Christian perspective, that if someone's not getting better, then it's the counselor's fault, or the counseling isn't working. I think we need to be a lot broader in our thinking with what some of the issues people are struggling with. If it was just an anxiety issue that is pretty surface level, I have clients all the time that I'll see for maybe 4 or 5 sessions, and we kind of work through whatever crisis they're going through that kind of brought all of these symptoms to the surface, and we work through it, and they go, I feel better, and I say, I think you're better too. If unless something comes up, I hope I never hear from you again. Go out and live your life. And that's a great thing. But there are others who they're going to be struggling for their entire lives, and if they're a Christian, then this is going to be part of their walk of dealing with mental health, of dealing with depression, or dealing with codependency, addiction, for their lives, and they're going to have good times. They're going to have good seasons and bad seasons. But to say that, well, then the counseling must not be working, I don't think that's fair to say either.
Yeah. Sorry, writing something down so I don't forget. I imagine that maybe you can speak to this, though you're educated about the system but not involved in it. But my understanding is that insurance wants specific diagnoses for, like, well, what do they have? And then insurance will pay out. And so there's not just like the money factor of drawing somebody out, but there might be the patient factor of, like, oh, I have this, I am this, sort of thing, because they have to in order to have the insurance money pay out. Have you, not working within that system, I'm sure that there have been times where you're like, those sounds like, or I'm sure you're thinking through, like, this sounds like these kinds of things in the, what is it, the DSM? Is that what it's called?
DSM-5, yeah.
Yeah. That this sounds like that, and so maybe I need to pursue or help through these kinds of things or whatever. But do you think that what maybe positive or negatives have you seen with people, like, hearing this is what you have, this is what you're dealing with, and then maybe assigning value to, or labels to that, or saying this is me, this is my identity? That's the word I wanted, identity.
I think that there's probably pros and cons to that.
Okay. Yeah.
For because I've told clients that it's like, oh, this sounds like mild depression, so that they know that's like I've dealt with this before. You're
Sure.
not alone. You're like this is very common, type thing. Can do a lot of help for the client, so that they know it's like, oh, I felt like this entire time I'm the only one dealing with this, and come to find out, oh, like there's a lot of people that deal with this. So okay, that kind of motivates them. To do the work that you're going to give them to do. I have seen it backfire, where someone that becomes a part of their identity. Typically, it's not with. I guess it can't. I guess I've experienced both of like not the typical anxiety and depression diagnoses, where it's just like, well, I'm depressed, and so I'm a depressed person now, and this is just who I am. I see it more with more like the serious diagnosis, like personality disorders, narcissism, bipolar, borderline, stuff like that, where that, you know, it they can identify with that in a bad way or in a good way.
Sure.
I mean, people are people, because when it comes to a personality disorder, it is very much kind of attached to their identity, and that they need to know that about themselves. Like, oh, I struggle with narcissism, and so when I see these attitudes and these thoughts creeping into my head about, you know, how everyone else is the problem and I'm not the problem, then I need to be able to call that out in myself, and go, oh, this is probably the narcissism talking here. But you know, it's that's a difficult thing. That's that's so nuanced to the individual. But there can be positives and negatives on both sides of that.
Yeah. To that point, that was one of the other things I wrote down. It's for anybody interested, maybe in learning more, you'd have to really be interested, because the book has a lot of stuff going on in it. Bessel van der Kolk's The Body Keeps the Score is, I think,
I got that right over there.
Yeah, it's somewhere behind me over there somewhere. I think it's, if I understand, it's like one of the books as far as how things, especially from a young age, but just as well as those like highly traumatic events, that your body will, that those things will just be imprinted on your body, on your brain, and all of that stuff. So when we talk about people being in this stuff long term, well, it's because you might even be trying to think through it in different ways, but you're still fighting a lot of other factors other than just, well, that happened, but it won't it's unlikely to ever happen again. And your body's like, no, it might, but it might though. And so we've got to protect in these ways, and we've got to. I think people who are kind of hypercritical of the amount of time things take don't understand, especially during a child's life, all the formative years. Like, hey, their parents did not equip them to handle life, but gave them all of this stuff, and so that's how they've been formed. How do you unform that? Well, it's not quick. It's not quick, and it might not ever be unformed. You just may have the tools, like you said, tools to manage those kinds of things and push through from there.
And they're gonna have seasons of success and then seasons of regression. At least in my experience, dealing with other people's issues.
Yeah. Well, so you talked about kind of the lull in summer, but then when we hit the winter months and all that, it's sad, isn't it? Right? Seasonal
affective disorder.
Thank you. Affective disorder. Yeah. Where It's like, oh, the sun's not out as much, and I can't be outside as much. All this stuff, like, yeah, okay.
It's a real thing.
Yeah,
it's a real thing.
Yeah,
especially here in Wyoming, where winter lasts 8 months, and it's just, people they're not outside. They're not getting that vitamin D. They're not getting active. And then marriage issues crop in there because you're forced to be around each other more. The kids are stuck inside, driving you crazy. And so all of these things just kind of crop up.
Yeah. But that drops off in the summer, but then maybe comes back. Or the comment you made about, hey, great, I unless you need some kind of like a check-in or something, hope I don't see you again, and all that stuff. And I think that's something people don't realize too, is like, you may go heavily consistently for some amount of time for some people, and then it's okay, I've maybe handled some of these deeper things. And I'm not talking as somebody who has a degree in this, but I am talking as somebody who's gone through that experience myself of consistently heavier here, and then feels like I'm equipped. And then sometimes some things come up and I'm like, I've got the tools. It's okay. We can work through this thing. And then other times it's, I need to go have a conversation about this because there's 3 or 4 things and I don't feel like I'm managing them well, and maybe just need the reminder or the, well, let's walk through it. Oh yeah. Okay. That's how we, so you could say, well, I've been in it for, 2 years or something, but it was like heavy here and then one here and one over here somewhere because the maintenance was necessary.
Yeah.
Help me use the tools again. And that's relevant in so many other areas of life. I reach out to ministers and stuff all the time, and they reach out to me and go, hey, like, I don't know what to do. What did we say with this passage? Am I missing something? What do I, just checking in with other people to get perspective and help and walking through all these things. I don't know if you have anything to add to that. I did write down another thought that I had, a question.
I had a thought, but it died due to loneliness. Good old Wayne Berger.
Yeah.
I know what I was going to talk about.
Okay.
That it seems like to me that some of the people who have the most polarizing opinions about counseling have never actually experienced it. And so I thought I might just talk about what counseling is.
Oh yeah, no, that'd be great.
Because I don't know, I think the movies and TV shows kind of sensationalize it. Of
what about Bob?
The one that comes come lay down on the couch.
Yeah.
Right. I'm going to show you an ink blot, and your response to that ink blot is going to let me know, how your sexuality was messed up in your childhood. Right. Like, that's not what counseling is. Counseling is, like, the way I view it is like what I said before, is that I view my role as just, I'm someone who is walking with another person through life. And when they get stuck in a rut, and they're doing the same, they call it insanity, right? Like doing the same things, expecting different results. And we can say that, and we can be like, "Oh, that's insanity," but we do it. Like, a lot of people do that. Of just like, man, why am I not getting the results that I'm wanting? And the reason why, a lot of times, is because you're viewing life through your eyes, right? Like. And so then you've convinced yourself of these things. You've made certain agreements in your life that you don't know that you've made, but you have, and you just kind of operate based off of those agreements, and it's not working. And so you need someone else, a third-party perspective, to go, hey, I did this, and then the response was this. Is that normal? Or, what am I doing wrong here? And then a counselor who is trained doesn't approach it with you're an idiot. Like, why would you do this? Like, that's so stupid. The way that we're taught, or the way that we're trained, is, have you considered this? And then they go, oh, okay. Like, well, the way that the counselor approaches it is not, so aggressive to kind of put you on the back foot, and the way that they listen to you and understand what you're experiencing, and what you're feeling, helps that to you to open up to their suggestions. And we're not, at least I'm not in the business of giving advice. Sometimes my clients ask for advice, but it's like, I'm not living your life, and so the advice that I might give you might be completely wrong. I can give you tools, and using those tools will inform me as to what's going on in your life, and the other tools that you might need, or other understanding. Understanding is a huge part of counseling. Because sometimes we don't know what's going on between our ears, and we just, things are happening in our lives, and then a counselor can come in and say, "Oh, like this is the connection that you're drawing here that shouldn't be there," and then you go, "Oh, I don't know why I was doing that." Yeah, well, that's what a counselor does.
Yeah.
And so if you've never gone to counseling before, you can have all of these kind of wild thoughts about what happens in there. That I'm not Jedi mind tricking people in my office here. We're just talking. We're just talking and discussing life, and in the issues that they are having, and giving them tools in order to cope, or to get some measure of victory in whatever they're experiencing.
Yeah. I never did the Rorschach test stuff. Disappointing. That would have been fun. Never laid down on a couch either. That would have been fun. I would have fallen asleep.
I have a couch. So I have in my office here, and I have a couch. It's not meant to be laid down on, but I have had some people lay down and start talking to me. I'm just like, you don't have to do that. You can just sit and talk to me like a normal person. The reason why I have a couch is so that when I do couples counseling, they can both sit on the couch.
Yeah. So to that point, man, I feel like I got a few ways this can all go, but they also kind of feel like they'll eventually tie together here. Okay, so
I trust you.
Okay. I wanted to ask about how. So, I guess that the value of that kind of conversation then for people who are Christians, like how does that fit in line as well with be pray, and you've never said don't pray. You've said praying more isn't always going to be the trauma part's gone. I prayed more. So how do those things kind of coexist? And then I'll throw this out there too, because this is more for you, of how has the counseling stuff maybe affected preaching and teaching for you? And I feel like those kind of go together. Like, how do you use it from a teaching perspective, and how do the congregation, Christians, that how should that affect them maybe personally? Do whatever you want with that. You no longer trust me.
How is this going to connect? Man, the first part of that question.
Because I know, there is no downplaying from you of the spirit side of things, Jesus side of things, the Word of God side of things. Like, there's no downplaying of that. But I do think that is a criticism from some of, I know that it is, because I sat at a preacher luncheon thing very early on, very, very early on. And the pornography discussion came up, and somebody just said somebody needs to tell those perverts to pray more and it'll handle it. Like, Okay, hold on. We believe in the power of prayer. I believe in it, maybe not as much as that guy, apparently, but we both believe in the power of prayer and the work of God, the work of the Spirit, and
Yeah.
all those sorts of things.
What does his prayer life look like?
So we believe in all of that, but we also believe in the power of community, I guess, would be the way to say it, the church, and what the church's responsibility is. And counseling, I think, is a part of that. So how do you help people, I guess, stay balanced between those two things and not rely too much on people? Yeah, and then does it affect your preaching whatsoever? That you know of?
I think one of the gifts of the Spirit, I think, is talking about what counselors do.
Okay.
In both the lists that we have in Romans and in First Corinthians, there are miraculous gifts and then there's non-miraculous gifts, right? And it is my opinion that those non-miraculous gifts still exist today. That's how one of the ways in which how the Spirit works in our lives. And at the end of the list in Romans chapter 12, it talks about the one who does acts of mercy with cheerfulness. And that's not showing an act of mercy that's not a miraculous thing. That's a non-miraculous thing. And so being a mercy, what I call it is a mercy giver, right? The person who shows mercy.
Yeah.
What is Paul talking about there? Like someone who shows acts of mercy. Is that just, someone who is, extremely good at forgiving people? And I think it's more than that. Because a mercy giver is someone who I think has a large amount of empathy in their lives. And I mean, not everyone is empathetic. They just aren't. Some people actually on the other side of it, where they would be apathetic, right? Like they don't care.
Yeah.
Like, and I would say that that's probably the majority of people. When someone experiences something bad, it's like, oh, tough for them, and then go on with their life. And then there's other people who, when people around them experience pain and tragedy, it's like they possess the ability to feel that, right? They feel that with the other person. And so I think that's what the mercy giver there is. And, like when we read other verses, like Galatians 6:2, right? Where it says, bear one another's burdens. What does that mean? Does that mean, can that mean, if someone has, needs a new porch built onto their house because their porch rotted away, can we bear one another's burdens and help build them a new fence? Sure. Yeah. That's one way I can bear my brother or sister's burdens with them. But what if their burden is something mental, right? Like some mental illness. What if their burden is trauma? How do I bear their burden? Well, it's through counseling, right? Like it's
like, helping. Yeah.
This is how I can help you process and work through some of these emotions. And then one of my favorite proverbs, I'll read it for you.
Okay.
Is this Proverbs 20 verse 5? The purpose in a man's heart is like deep water, but a man of understanding will draw it out. Isn't that good?
Yeah.
I love that. I love that. A man of understanding will be able to draw out that deep water in another man's heart. And I can tell you this: I've been a man for 38 years, and us men, we are some of the worst when it comes to letting that deep water out of our hearts. And sometimes it takes tragedy, it takes crisis, it takes something big and dark in someone's life for them to finally open it up. And if it's not done right, they can just as easily just like close up that heart again and never let that stuff out. But I'm not the biggest learned man when it comes to Proverbs. But when I read something like this, that resonates with me. Of a man of understanding will draw it out, and that process of drawing out that deep water sometimes takes years, or a lifetime.
It's great that you brought up Proverbs, because the word that was going around in my head when we were talking about the spiritual gifts, things like that, like wisdom, because with all the stuff that we all the people that we talk to, ourselves personally as well, with pornography stuff and things like that, like, well, hey, you should not look at those things. Yeah, I know. I know. How do I how do I stop? What are the processes? Please guide me through all this. Well, one of those is knowledge and one of those is wisdom. And a lot of the time wisdom is I need somebody else to guide me through this. Like the bearing one another's burdens is I need somebody else to, because I can't repair my deck. I don't know how to do this. That's a lack of knowledge and lack of wisdom. But this person can do it all or something. Or sometimes it's, I know that this is bad. I can't stop. I want to stop desperately. Praying about stopping. I've read it 100 times that I know it should be stopped. I don't know how. And until somebody comes through and draws out, like you said, the deep water of, hey, have you maybe it's because you're dealing with these things that, like, you're doing this, or oh man, I didn't think about that. That wisdom coming from other people, and we see it with like 1 Corinthians 6 is you've got believers having lawsuits with believers. They're taking it before the culture and airing out all that laundry and stuff, and Paul says, don't you just have somebody who's older and wise that can help you mediate these problems? That's, as you described counseling, like that's what that is. It's like, hey, we have the tools to solve this. We're Christians. We should be able to talk about these things, get all this sorted out. Let's discuss. Let's use wisdom here. Let's draw out the real issues and let's get it solved. We don't need to fight or do all this stuff with one another. This principle of people coming to people, and I didn't know about that proverb. That proverb's great, so I'm gonna hold on to that one.
That's a tattoo worthy Bible verse right there.
Yeah.
all you Christian counselors,
we got your stance 25. On tattoos as well for this episode, so that's good. So that original question of like Christians and not undermining the power of the word and all those things. Like, I think it's this, as you've said it, I'm just summarizing for you, I guess. Tell me if I'm off. Is it's okay to have others who also believe in the power of those things guide you through it, walk with you through it. Yeah. Use that wisdom, draw out the water, all that sort of like.
One of my professors, what he said about counseling is like it's a very unique profession in that you are both the administrator of the the wisdom, or you're the administrator of the thing, but you're also the tool to implement it. Like he always related it to like being a surgeon. We're both the surgeon and the scalpel at the same time.
Yeah.
And I think in the life of a Christian, um, the power of God's word is in the doing of it, right?
Yeah. Yes.
And so it's, like the power of God's word, sometimes it is just, hey, let me throw you this verse at you. And it's like, it just hits you like a ton of bricks, right? Of just like, whoa,
Yep.
that like, I completely forgot, or I had never read that before, or I'd never thought of it in that way before. And sometimes God's word is that powerful. Other times, I would say it's like that surgeon and scalpel thing, that sometimes us as Christians, the way that we can implement the word into other people's lives is by doing it, by administering the gospel into someone's life. And not a word of scripture sometimes needs to be spoken for that, because you're just doing what the word has told you to do.
Yeah. 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 And that goes back to that compartmentalizing stuff of like,
yeah,
no, it's the ethics of the power of God and all of this. The fruit of that is being seen for you, at least to some, because you're also doing the ministry thing. But to some degree, the fruit of that is seen in the counseling portion of stuff. Like this is you exercising the power of God's word and the spirit to bear fruit in this way over here. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
The second part of that question of, like, how has the counseling affected my ministry?
Yeah.
I would say in two major ways. One, that I'm much more empathetic to what's going on in people's lives, because I don't know if I was totally in that vein of just like, you just need to pray more. You need to read your Bible more. But I was definitely more towards that side than I was before,
Sure.
before going through the program, and truly sitting with people who have lives that are vastly different than mine, and are struggling with things that I could never even dream about. And so it's caused me to be much more empathetic with what people are going through, but it's also caused me to have a lot more courage in talking about certain things. It was 2 weeks ago. I'm preaching through Job right now, that's a great counseling book as well. And it's kind of talking about what we're talking about right now. Of like, there's so many people. Job's friends come in and they have so much to say, that is the majority of the book, right?
Yeah.
Of just like, hey, this is what these three guys have to say.
They're part of the system.
And then God comes in and says, you're all idiots.
Yeah.
Like, why would you think that? And here's what I have to say. And that's that's the world that we live in right now, right? Everyone has, their own thing that they want to tell us and influence us with, and we're so prone to believe that. But in chapter 3, that's after, like, Job's lost everything, his health is gone, his wife's told him to curse God and die. In chapter 3, Job, we get the first parts of him speaking, and he says, I think 4 or 5 times in a very short chapter, in chapter 3, that he wants to die. He's like, he just says, just kill me. In fact, he says that I wish I was like a stillborn child. I mean, that is some deep, dark grief and pain that he is experiencing right now. And it gave me an opportunity to talk about suicide. Suicide is a very real thing. And especially in the state of Wyoming, per capita, we are always either 1 or 2 in the nation when it comes to suicide. And we have several people in our congregation who have been directly affected by suicide, who have had family members kill themselves. And for a long time, along with mental health, suicide has been just taboo, right? Like, you just don't talk about it because it's too ugly, it's too dark, and like, you don't even want to say the word, that so that it might get implanted in someone's mind through that. But it's like, if we're afraid to talk about those things, then people are suffering by themselves. And so having my background, knowing what it is, I've assessed so many people, more than I would like to mention, for suicidal ideation. And I'm comfortable with it now. I mean, I'm not so comfortable that it's like, oh yeah, it's never serious. But before that, even saying the word suicide was hard, because like you don't ever want to think about that. But that's what some people are struggling with, and so like we need to shine the light of God's word on that, as well as we do, gossip, right?
Well, so summer camp every year, and this was while I was in high school, and then doing counseling, and then I stopped doing summer camps for a while, and now my son's going, so I'm pulled right back in. So I'm looking forward to that this summer.
You get to go, Jack. You get to
go. Oklahoma's hot, dude. It's hot in the summer. But when we did several classes throughout the week, but we did Q&A with the high school. High schoolers got to do Q&A. We got to submit questions, and I was on the question submitting side, and then I was also on like the panel side of things once or twice. Every single year, somebody asked a suicide question because they had people they knew. I knew one of my friends at high school did so, just took his life because a domino fell in his life that affected a couple other things, and he's like, well, that's it for me. That was all he had, and it was gone. We were all affected by those sorts of things, and you had high schoolers that are like, we're desperate for answers for this because we're not going to hear about it on Sunday. So that's good. Like I've going through therapy process myself and learning a lot about me, reading about some of those things. That's the closest I've come to, because haven't pursued a degree, unlikely to pursue a degree in those things and stuff like that.
Don't do it, Jack. Don't do it.
I've thought about degree pursuit, but it would be probably strictly theological. So, but the thing that's done for me is like I've just reading and picking up a lot of these books of like people who are struggling with various different types of things, and reading through that and going, hey, I want to share these things. We need to talk about these things. They are present in the Bible. They're present in your guys' lives. And I'm going to cite people who either it was present for them. That's most of the time. Like it was them and they came through it, or they deal with it in these ways or whatever. But man, every single time I talk about stuff, or somebody I know talks about stuff that nobody else is really willing to talk about, there's always just like a mob of people that are, hey, thank you for talking about that thing that we're all thinking about that doesn't get addressed. And I never would have thought about preaching through Job ever. No. Just kidding. Job 1 and 2, and then the last chapters. Like that's how you do it. No, that's good.
It's fun time.
Okay, so I do have like I don't know, a final question, but before I ask that, anything you feel like maybe we missed or we went over that you'd like to elaborate more on? You want to rail against the system a little more?
Just rage against the machine.
Oh, this was long ago now, but a lot of people who are maybe critical of counseling didn't have it. The other side of that too is a lot of people critical against counseling had bad counseling.
Yeah. And I mean, there are bad counselors out there, and that shouldn't color your entire thought process when it comes to counselors. And there's also such a thing as just a bad fit. It doesn't mean that they're a bad counselor. Maybe they were a bad counselor for you. And sometimes it is, you got to try to find the right one that fits you and what you're experiencing. I had a bad counselor. I had a counselor that told me that this like very traumatic stuff in my past, in my childhood, he just flat out told me that's not trauma.
Oh man, okay.
You sure? Because it feels like trauma. It feels like trauma to me. And so I just knew, it was like, this guy's not going to work for me.
Yeah, the one I had was not that extreme, but I had one that was, it just felt like spinning our wheels too much. Like we're not doing anything here. We're not really addressing anything. We're not really, I just feel like I'm talking about stuff, but going, oh yeah, no, I see. Like, no, I want to get this solved, dude. Help me. And then I've had most recent one who's like, okay, maybe some of these things, let's try some of the, but like you described it too, of very non-aggressive. In fact, pretty introverted, honestly. Looking down at the floor.
Can you talk more?
Okay. But very good about making some suggestions or going, have you connected this thing with this thing? And I'm like, yeah, okay. And I'm a reader. So I'm like, hey, is there stuff that I can read on this or watch on it? Yeah, I got some suggestions for you. Why don't you try these things out? Okay, great. Like that sort of stuff. But yeah, there are guys that are just not good fits. And definitely some better than others, maybe just generally.
I mean, I think it's like that with like most professions, right? There's some preachers that people go, oh man, like
this is the guy. Yeah,
this is the guy. And then there's other people with that same preacher that go, this is the worst preacher I've ever heard. And it's like
I've never experienced that, but yeah, I'm sure it's out there. Okay, well, my final kind of question here then would be, I guess from the very practical side of things, is what advice would you give to, I have Christians. I don't know if it's the same answer for non-Christians. If it's a separate one, that's fine with me. But those seeking counseling, what would you encourage them to do with that, maybe that urge or that question that they have?
Don't call me.
Okay. Visit my website.
I would say the majority of people who reach out for counseling do so through word of mouth. It's either like I went to this person and they worked really great for me, give them a try. Or like we had a kid, my kids have been in counseling at different times in their lives for different reasons, and so we know our experience, and if we would refer other people to that counselor. And so I would say the biggest thing is that we need to destigmatize mental health. And that even, I mean, I think today we're doing a pretty good job of that as a culture, as American culture. Maybe too much, in fact.
Culture's giving it a new stigma of like,
like everyone's in counseling.
Right.
But it seems, at least in my experience in the church, it's still very stigmatized. Of like people shouldn't go to counseling because counseling historically has been a very humanistic type of practice, but that doesn't mean that every counselor is like that. And that, now there are various, especially if you're in a largely populated area, there are Christian counselors out there who are equipped and educated and are able to solve your problem. Not solve your problem, but help you solve your problem.
Yeah.
But I would not. For most people, counseling is like the last resort, especially when it comes to marriage counseling. It's like this is the last thing we're going to try, and if this doesn't work, then I guess we're done. We need to destigmatize it to the point where counseling is one of the first things that we do. The marriage counseling as a whole has a success rate of 20%, which is bad.
Yeah,
that's way down there. And it's my belief that the reason why the statistics are so bad when it comes to marriage counseling is that by the time a couple finally agrees to go get counseling, there's not much of a marriage to save.
Yeah.
The marriage is done. And it's just like, well, let's go to counseling to make sure, I've already made up my mind. So, let me just, reassure myself that I'm making the right decision.
Yeah.
Here by leaving. And instead, if you went there, I've experienced both sides of that, of people that it's like, these guys hate each other. And I don't know how much sitting in a room and arguing in front of me is going to solve this. But I've had other people who come in and they're very early on in the process, and through the process of counseling, they remember why they love each other. And so I would not. We need to change the way that we view counseling as a last resort. That's what I would say.
Yeah. Yeah. And just advice in general. Being open. That's always been the website that we initially started was because you sent me and another friend of yours a book and said, I struggle with this. Pretty sure you guys struggle with this. Let's read through this. Let's try to do this thing. Book's called Open. And that's been this principle that
we've been like a life mantra.
Yes. Yeah. And you've helped me become a lot more open as an individual. And then that's only developed over the last really couple years for me in a big way. That I won't share on this particular episode. But yeah, just not holding everything in, all the deep water stuff, right? Good, great proverb. So good. Not holding all that in and then going, well, I guess we'll go ahead and just dump on this individual and see what magic they can work. No, don't work like that. Be open and honest and willing to be vulnerable, as difficult a process as that is. Doing so and getting something healthy either within a marriage or personally is super worth it.
Yeah.
Awesome. Cool. Thanks for interviewing, man.
Hey, no problem.
Good.
Like I said, I like to talk. So
yeah, I mean, we did these. I was the co-host for our stuff. I am still the co-host now with Spencer's stuff, though I am doing the current series I'm doing. I'm actually leading that particular study. But it's nice to co-host for you again.
Well, I hope this helps people.
Yeah.
In various different, the part of the process when it comes to counseling. And if you're listening to this, and you really do need help, you can contact me. You can. I won't. In fact, I never turn anyone away. So, I just want to help people.
Yeah. Well, right on. Most people know how to get a hold of me, and so I can always ask questions and go, "Hey, this person lives in such and such a place. Do you know anybody there?" Maybe you can get them in touch with and all that. But thanks for the interview. I learned a lot of things. It was nice to hear from somebody who does this, kind of their experience with it, and you were in therapy. You're in ministry, you do therapy stuff. It's just nice to have that perspective. And I would encourage everybody, kind of as we close here, just even outside of counseling, part of thinking theologically means asking questions, talking to people, going to sources, that sort of stuff. Be willing to do that. Hear out from people and study from there and learn and grow from there. Chris, thank you very much for being here, and look forward to talking to you again soon.
Yeah, thanks.